Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really wild. We're exploring the intersection of two fields you'd probably never expect to see in the same room, astrology and behavioral finance. Seriously, we're going to look at how two completely different frameworks have landed on the exact same profound truths about human behavior, money, and our deep-seated need for security. We'll be unpacking this concept called Saturn's ledger and looking at how fear, caution, and discipline influence our financial decisions. For better and for worse. So ask yourself honestly, is your financial caution protecting your future or quietly preventing it? Think about your own savings habits for a second. When you hold onto your cash or when you hesitate to make that investment, you probably feel like you're doing the responsible thing, right? You feel safe. But what if that very instinct to build a massive protective wall around your money is actually the exact thing stopping your wealth from growing? The stakes here are incredibly high, and honestly, this balance dictates the entire trajectory of your financial life. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the mindset of caution and validating the instinct to protect. Now, before we get into the risks of playing it too safe, we really need to take a step back and validate that natural instinct you have to protect your money. Prioritizing stability, that isn't a flaw. It's a deeply ingrained psychological and, as we'll see, astrological response to a totally unpredictable world. It's perfectly natural to want to hold on to what you've worked so hard to build. To understand this mindset, let's look at our first framework. In astrology, there's this specific placement known as Saturn in the second house. The second house is the area that governs your personal finances, your savings, possessions, and your long-term financial security. Now, when you bring the planet Saturn into that house, it introduces a very specific energy. Saturn represents discipline, patience, responsibility, and extreme caution. It's basically the planet of delayed rewards and structure. So when Saturn sits in the house of money, it creates an intensely serious, disciplined relationship with financial security. People with this influence think incredibly carefully before they spend, before they borrow, and, well, certainly before they invest. The ultimate goal of this disciplined mindset is simple: preparation over uncertainty. This financial foundation is built entirely on the preference for protecting existing wealth rather than taking any unnecessary risks. It's a mindset that naturally values stability way over excitement. The thrill of a potential big win in the market, that is completely overshadowed by the absolute, literal need to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. Moving on to Section 2, the comfort of saving and building a visible financial fortress. So, why do we love saving so much? Well, because saving money simply feels comfortable. When you put money into a savings account, you can just pull out your phone and see a number that only goes up, or at least stays the same. Watching that account grow creates a highly visible, tangible sense of safety. It gives us this deep, powerful emotional reassurance in a world that, let's be honest, usually feels pretty chaotic. And let's be incredibly clear here. These habits, careful budgeting, consistent saving, avoiding unnecessary debt, disciplined spending, these are absolute superpowers. They form the bedrock of a strong financial foundation. These behaviors actively protect people during times of economic uncertainty, and more importantly, having these disciplined systems in place radically reduces the chances that you're going to make some emotional, panicked financial decision when times get tough. But investing introduces a whole new element: uncertainty. Markets fluctuate, prices rise and fall. And this brings us to our second framework, behavioral finance. Behavioral finance explains exactly why those temporary losses in the market are so emotionally agonizing. And it's through a principle called loss aversion. Basically, loss aversion dictates that the psychological pain of losing money feels significantly stronger than the pleasure of gaining that exact same amount. Finding $100 feels good, sure, but losing $100, that feels terrible. And this is exactly why watching an investment temporarily dip into the red is just so incredibly difficult to stomach for someone who really craves stability. Okay, let's dive into this comparison because this is where the magic really happens. Look at astrology's Saturn influence. It drives a deep desire to avoid mistakes and maintain control. Meanwhile, behavioral finance highlights loss aversion and this profound fear of temporary losses. Notice how perfectly these align? The astrological caution of Saturn is the exact same phenomenon as the psychological reality of loss aversion. It's like two sides of the same coin. Both frameworks are pointing to the exact same human tendency. We are hardwired to protect ourselves from the pain of financial loss. Now, Section 3, the hidden risk of safety, when protecting your money actually becomes a liability. Here is where we absolutely have to shift gears. The comfort of saving? That's over. As our source material brilliantly points out, avoiding all risk can become its own financial risk over time. Think about that for a second. The crucial point here is that sitting entirely in cash is not a risk-free strategy. Sure, it feels safe because that nominal number in your bank account isn't going down, but behavioral finance shakes us awake and reminds us that relying only on saving creates a massive silent vulnerability. Your perception of safety is actually just an illusion. And the core reason for that illusion? The silent wealth killer, inflation. While your money is sitting there, safely locked in a vault, inflation is gradually, invisibly eating away at its purchasing power. If your money is just left idle, it simply may not grow enough to actually support your long-term financial goals. You are losing wealth. You just don't see the numbers physically ticking down on your bank balance. Which brings us to Section 4, the analysis paralysis trap, how excessive research creates hesitation. So what happens when it's actually time for a naturally cautious person to finally make an investment? Well, often that protective instinct completely backfires. The very traits that make you a great saver, your responsibility, your caution, your careful thought, they can suddenly morph into severe hesitation. Let's walk through exactly how this trap plays out. Step 1, a person, maybe someone heavily influenced by that Saturn in the second house energy, finally decides to invest. They begin researching opportunities, but this research drags out into weeks or even months without a single decision. Step 2, because they are completely wired to avoid mistakes, they start spotting hidden dangers and fatal flaws in literally every single option they look at. And then, Step 3, they decide to just wait for a moment of perfect safety in the market, a moment that, spoiler alert, never actually comes. For them, waiting simply feels so much safer than actually pulling the trigger and taking action. The core issue here is that excessive information gathering just delays action. Behavioral finance shows us over and over that people will endlessly delay making important financial decisions, even when the evidence sitting right in front of them already supports taking a reasonable action. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they're looking for an excuse not to act. Astrology reflects this perfectly through Saturn's cautious nature, showing us how the overwhelming desire to be perfectly responsible can literally paralyze us into doing absolutely nothing. All right, bringing it all together in Section 5, Protecting versus Growing Wealth. Finding the perfect balance for long-term security. So how do we actually solve this? Well, true, lasting financial security requires us to synthesize everything we've talked about so far. We have to find that perfect balance between keeping our money safe and forcing it to work for us. And this brilliantly illustrates Saturn's remarkable strengths, because its influence isn't just about paralysis. It actually provides incredible power when applied to investing. Consider these qualities: patience and consistency, long-term thinking, regular contributions, and emotional stability. I mean, these are the exact traits of incredibly successful wealth builders. Behavioral finance consistently proves that successful investing depends way more on these disciplined habits and gradual progress than on, chasing quick profits. Investors who remain patient and emotionally stable through all the wild market cycles, they almost always outperform the folks who react emotionally to every little blip in movement. It really comes down to this fundamental difference. Protecting wealth means saving for today's safety, while growing wealth means investing for tomorrow's future. Both are absolutely critical. Neither should ever replace the other. Astrology teaches us that Saturn brings responsibility through experience, while behavioral finance explains that balancing our natural caution with calculated risk is exactly what creates the healthiest financial outcomes. You definitely must avoid losses, yes, but you must also allow your wealth to steadily grow over time. Which brings us right back to our ultimate question. Ask yourself again, but this time with the weight of everything we've just uncovered. Is your financial caution protecting your future, or is it quietly preventing it from expanding? Lasting wealth doesn't come from reckless risk-taking, for sure, but it doesn't come from excessive caution either. It comes from thoughtful planning, emotional balance, and having the wisdom to know exactly when protecting your money is enough and when letting it grow becomes the wiser choice. Take a look at your own ledger today and ask yourself, which side of the equation needs your attention?